It's Tuesday, the 8th of March, 2016. I am Robin Yellow, and this is Techtasm. Microsoft loves Linux. With me is James Woodall. How you doing, James?
Hey, Robin. Really good, thank you. Really good.
Having a good week?
Always.
Well, this week, you and I, James, will be looking at some exciting topics, including some interesting news on Project Loon. We're going to find out about how to standardize your external GPU, if that doesn't sound dull. We've got a brace of Amazon stories covering VR and the new Echo Dot. And Microsoft announced that they are putting SQL Server onto Linux. And we'll be calling each one of these as either a real or a Techtasm, which by our definition is a portmanteau of tech for technology, a machine piece of equipment, method, etc., and tasm for phantasm, something that exists only in a person's mind. So without further ado, James, let's get on with the show. TechCrunch reported this week that Google are in talks with telecoms in India to pilot Project Loon. Now, this is a project that's been running for some time, but it's only now that Google is talking seriously about putting this thing into the air to replace the cellular towers to provide affordable internet to rural areas. And according to this article in the Economic Times, the company is in discussions with BSNL and other companies to pilot Project Loon in India. Now, the managing director of Google India, who's Rajan Anandan, told the newspaper that you can't do a Loon pilot without partnering with a local telco. So we're talking to a number of them, adding the government has been very supportive. Of course, it's India. He didn't say that, I did. And we are working on a pilot and working our ways through it. In India, the important thing is to work through things. So obviously, what's happening here, James, is that technology is something they've already proved out from their trials in New Zealand. I think Indonesia, they did another trial. And what they're saying here is actually to get approval of either the local government and or the local telco. That's the thing that's taking their time. I wonder why they chose India.
Well, I suspect it's the challenge. Google are known for its moonshots, as we know, with Google Glass, the driverless car, and so forth. I think partly the challenge, but also the market share available to them is huge. I mean, India has, 1 billion people? So from seeing their really fancy marketing video for Project Loon, where they say that even though we all think of ourselves as everybody's on the internet, in fact, for every person on the internet, there's 2 people who aren't. This is a great opportunity for Google to grab some market share.
And just as a reminder, James, what is Project Loon, just for our listeners?
It's the idea that you can use a hot air balloon to distribute, I guess, a Wi-Fi signal across a wide area without using traditional cables. I mean,
some would say a loony idea.
Some might say that, yes.
It's comedy gold. Now, it's interesting enough, Facebook, of course, had problems in India recently with their free basics offering,
yes,
which they attempted to launch into the Indian market, only to find that the government banned it because it violates principles of net neutrality. And net neutrality is a principle that you do not favor one service over another, and the internet is available to all on the same basis.
Yeah, and I think that Facebook and Google are completely different companies in the sense that Facebook generally offer one service. You know, it's a social network, whereas Google is all things to everybody. Now, I mean, certainly with email and searching and news and images and Android phones and so forth, I think that they've certainly got a larger shot at doing this without causing too many people to raise any problems. Overall, I really like this because, at the end of the day, we can't all be fortunate enough to live in a country that's full of telco infrastructure. I mean, India, of course, doesn't have that to the same extent that we enjoy here in the UK as in other countries. So this is a great way of getting the internet to people who may never have seen it.
Well, if the cynic in me says this is a great way of getting Google's AdWords in front of another billion people, which I think was one of the criticisms leveled at the Facebook's Free Basics product. Quick quiz, James. Can you name the Chief Executive Officer of Google? Not good
Google.
enough. It's Sundar Pichai. And can you name the Prime Minister of India?
No, I can't.
Oh, come on. It's Narendra Modi. Well, there you go. That is the Techtasm team demonstrating their ignorance in spades, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Is it a Techtasm? So is the idea of putting balloons in the air to spread internet to the population a fantasy, or is it a real thing?
I think it's a real thing. It sounds like it would be crazy, but I can't think of another way that they would do it. Yeah.
Well, I think this idea has lasted longer than I thought it was going to. I'm still going to call it a Techtasm. I honestly don't think it's going to work. So we're split on that one, James. We're just going to have to agree to disagree. Ask Technica UK reported this week that AMD is looking to standardize the external GPU. Now, what on earth is an external GPU, James?
Well, if we think back to those wonderful grey boxes of 20 years ago, as Steve Jobs was calling it, a GPU, the graphics processor inside your PC, is a component in its own right whose job it is to turn digital images into something that your human eye can see through a monitor. So you take 3D calculations or 2D calculations and lots of fancy things that are way beyond my intelligence.
Well, according to AMD's technical marketing head, Robert Hallock, ultra-thin notebooks are awesome to carry, but nobody in their right mind would confuse one for a gaming notebook. Yes. And he says, well, actually, they've discovered, or they believe there's a big market for thin notebooks that can also game. Now, I seem to remember something from some company from CES had one of these, didn't they? Yeah,
Razer. Yeah, it's not really a new concept. It's probably new for this year, but this is not a unique thing to AMD. I mean, he's possibly right by saying that there's a market for people who have ultra-thin notebooks, but is the answer to carry around a not-so-ultra-thin external graphics card?
Well, wouldn't they? I mean, surely in this particular... And just to be clear, the external graphics card is in sort of a box, which is connected either with a Thunderbolt connector or a USB Type-C connector that can deliver the kind of 40 gigabits of bandwidth required for gaming to happen. Surely the offer, James, is to leave the gaming GPU on your desktop at home, and then if you need an ultra thin to go and do something somewhere else, you just take the PC, which presumably has got the same power as a regular PC.
Yes. I presume so. That would make a lot of sense. I mean, interestingly enough, actually, thinking about it, haven't Microsoft done this with the Surface Book? By when the tablet is connected to the keyboard, there's actually extra processing power built into the keyboard. Maybe that makes a lot more sense than having an extra box. But
I think there's a GPU in the keyboard part of it, and when you disconnect the screen itself, it runs on the sort of on-board system on a chip Intel graphics that are built into the tablet side of it.
Yeah, the theory is sound. I'm just not completely sold on the idea of having a big box, because of course there's a lot more to a gaming PC than just a great graphics card. You know, the speed of your CPU is also incredibly important, and there's a big difference between an Intel Core i5 and a Core i5M, M being for mobile.
Well, in January 2015, Asus actually unveiled its ROG G Station 2, which uses a pair of Thunderbolt 3 connections to create an external PCI Express × 4 slot. And it was Razer, of course, also used Thunderbolt 3 for their system. I haven't seen any that use USB Type-C, though technically there's no reason why you couldn't use that, is there?
No, I suppose not. I mean, that I don't necessarily think there's anything to read into that. I think Thunderbolt is very fashionable, perhaps because of the Mac connection to it.
Do you get those on PCs?
Thunderbolt. I've not seen them on PC. Oh, actually, I'm aware of them. I haven't seen them. I mean, Thunderbolt, of course, is an Intel technology called Lightpeak, which Apple were the first to really adopt. I can't remember how many years ago, maybe 6 years ago now.
I must admit, I've never seen a Thunderbolt connector on a PC. I must admit, I've never seen that. But I'm not massively into these gaming PCs.
No, but I think the theory for this is absolutely sound. But I'm definitely believe that the form factor is going to make the difference. You know, what Microsoft have done with the Surface Book makes a lot more sense to me than taking, because in that sense it's still portable, than taking something that AMD have done, because, well, it kind of isn't.
By the way, talking of Surface Books, I'm hearing some worrying reports and stories that people are experiencing really glitchy behavior with it. It isn't the smooth and seamless Apple-type experience that perhaps Microsoft was shooting for. It's more of a sort of buggy, glitchy, drivers malfunctiony type thing. And in fact, Lon Seidman, both you and I are big fans of Lon. Yeah. His Surface Book, he's actually sent it back. He's a very good thing on YouTube, actually, where he goes into detail about exactly what was wrong with it and why he sent it back, and the response of Microsoft support. So, call it, James, is it real, or is the idea of having GPUs in a separate box a Techtasm?
The concept of an external GPU is definitely a real. Whether or not it's AMD's rather large box, I think perhaps might make it a Techtasm. It depends on what the manufacturers decide to do on the form factor side. The concept, however, is rock solid. Okay. Definitely real.
I think this is a real one too. I think you actually get a 2-for-1 technically. If you look at a typical gaming laptop, it's actually quite big and heavy. If you could take that and convert it into an ultra-thin format and put potentially much more powerful GPUs into an external box, I think it's got the whiff of a winner. A brace of Amazon stories for you, James. Goodness me, it's Ars Technica again. Reported this week that the Amazon's new Echo Dot is a mini speaker that brings Alexa into any room. Now, if you listen to Techtasm, you'll know we spoke before about the Amazon Echo and how we thought it was a copacetic device. Well, they've now shrunk it down. They've effectively cut the top off it, taken the big speaker out of it, and allowed you, and they've called it this Amazon's Echo Dot. It's like a miniature version with the same features. It's got a tiny speaker in there, but the idea is that you actually connect it to your preferred audio system yourself. So it kind of hangs off the back, I suppose, a little bit like a Nexus player or maybe a Chromecast audio or something like that. So you talk to it in the same way. It carries the same array microphone in what's left of it, but it's half the price, $99. And also allows you to extend out your ecosystem from your main Amazon Echo. What do you think of this one, James?
It's a great idea. I mean, we're both fans of the concept, certainly of the Echo, and being realistic, because it was marketed as a kitchen device. You know, are you likely to have yet another speaker in your living room or in your home office or your bedroom and so forth? So the idea that you can bring this, as you said, to different parts of your home while still keeping the main Echo in the kitchen, perhaps, if that's the main use case, yeah, that's perfect. The concept of a product family is something that all the major companies do because, you know, there is no one-size-fits-all in today's tech world. So it's a really smart move, makes a lot of sense. I look forward to them coming to the UK.
Here's a killer feature for me. Music services like iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, and also Amazon's built-in music service. You can connect this thing to the best speakers in your house, and actually get some proper quality audio. And that was a thing that was lacking. What was great is that whereas Chromecast audio requires you to actually fiddle with an app, in theory you can just tell the Echo Dot to play a certain song, play a type of genre. I can play all that kind of those 80s power ballads that I love.
Yes, you do.
And there's the Birdie song for you, James, which I know you love.
You can't go without that.
You only need one song.
This is very, very true. Very true. I'm a man of simple taste.
Yeah, so the dot is actually $89, not $99 like I just said, but that is half the price of the $179 Echo. So I've got another Amazon story for you, and this one actually is one of my obsessions, as you know, James, and that's Amazon posted a job recently, and this is according to Engadget, advertising for a VR job. So it was inevitable, I think, that Amazon dived into this market. Now, the ad itself was spotted by Upload VR, and the company wrote that it's looking for a senior software development manager to lead a team that will build a VR experience within Amazon Video. Now, this is clearly looking a bit like catch-up, and it's not at all clear what Jeff Bezos is planning at all, and they certainly have not in any way made a statement, but by putting this advert out there, there was a good chance it was going to get noticed. They're clearly getting into VR, aren't they, as well?
Absolutely. And with a company of Amazon's size, and, as we've mentioned a few weeks ago, they've come a long way from a humble online bookseller. It makes perfect sense that they'd be looking at VR, even if they won't do anything with it, because companies like this need to experiment. They need to do R&D. The only way they can advance is by doing R&D, because, hey, if they sit still, their competitors will overtake them. Does this mean they are actually going to deliver something in VR? I don't know, but I'm certainly not surprised that they're looking into it, because...
Well, the job description itself said, entertainment, I quote here, entertainment is rapidly evolving. The future will not be limited to passive 2D experiences. The virtual reality team will explore and create the platform and interface for immersive storytelling. This will include an ingestion and playback platform for virtual reality experiences. Bit of a mouthful, but it kind of implies they're looking to do something maybe a little bit more interesting than just putting 360 degrees video into YouTube.
Yes, of course. It sounds great, and I will caution, however, all we have to go on is these 3 sentences.
Well, on this show, James, as you know, all we need is 3 sentences to call it real or call it a Techtasm. What does it sound like to you, my friend?
Do I think it will come out?
Yeah.
Real? Do I think it will make sense? Fire phone. It's a Techtasm.
The old Fire phone. Let's never let them forget that one. I think this is real. I think VR is real this year. I think it's so hot, everybody's going to be in it. I think they're going to be fast followers, though, but I'm still calling it real. Well done, Amazon. I'm looking forward to your cheap devices that I can enjoy my virtual reality experiences in. Guess what, James? Your favorite company is launching one of its products that's been on Windows since time began to Linux. What on earth's going on here?
Yes, good old Scott Guthrie, Executive Vice President at Microsoft on the product division. I've been following Scott for many, many years as the father of ASP.NET. Wow, SQL Server on Linux. I have to say, I did tweet this just before the show.
Oh my goodness.
The show. We recorded the show. Wow. SQL Server, amazing product. Microsoft are definitely one of the leaders in relational databases. And so for our listeners out there, databases, of course, power everything that we do. They store all of our data, and the power of a relational database allows you to link up and create relations between objects. So users belong to groups, or apps live on devices, and hey, I'm being very abstract here. However, the biggest limitation to SQL Server to date is you needed to run it on Windows, and Windows, of course, comes with a license fee. Now, of course, there are people out there that say Linux isn't actually free, but, well, in terms of the license fee, it certainly is. This is definitely the Microsoft of, it's a new, exciting Microsoft that certainly under the Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer years, I mean, never ever would have seen this. I mean, the fact that they're pushing Office really hard on the iPad, Office certainly on a Mac is improving, and now this. Hey, and even with last week with the acquisition of Xamarin, this is a fantastic way to see that Microsoft are really, really pushing out onto many platforms, and it's not about their own platform now. It's just about getting their software on as many platforms as possible.
For sure. And do you know, certainly one of the advantages of SQL Server was its ease of use with the management console, of course, makes it very easy to get into databases. Is this the nail in the coffin for the behemoth, for the monster, for the gigantic disaster that is Oracle?
Yeah, well, they've certainly had a very sweet spot for a while. I think this is my opinion here. I think MySQL, which of course is one of the big relational databases across Linux, I think has always been used because SQL Server wasn't available. I'm speaking as a MySQL user as well as an MS SQL user, and given the choice, I'll always use MS SQL purely for its, it's great. Will this put the nail in the coffin for Oracle? Well, you've got to remember with enterprise, and although I say this to you, who knows much more about enterprise software than me, companies buy into a 10, 15-year plan. So could it be the nail in the coffin for Oracle for people like ourselves? Yes, possibly. Will Oracle die? Of course not. I mean, they're huge and everywhere, although maybe we would have said the same thing about BlackBerry 10 years ago.
Well, true. And I don't think Oracle's a disaster. It's powered most of the data management, storage and retrieval of the entire universe for the last 40 years. So, they are the masters. But certainly this will help, I think, with their market share. I'm going to take issue with one thing you said, though, James. I'm not sure that all data is held in relational databases these days.
It's not today, no. You're absolutely right. Certainly go back 5 years, it will have been. But I have to credit you, good sir, with introducing me to the joys of NoSQL databases 1 or 2 years ago. The world is certainly moving towards hybrid models. I think SAP's HANA platform is an interesting, I wouldn't say it's a great example, but it's an interesting example of how you can combine both old school relational and new style NoSQL, which is certainly very interesting. And there's also, of course, the advent of, the time series databases, and there's lots of new types of things. I'm very impressed with Redis and those sorts of things. But
we're entering the era of virtually unlimited processing power and storage capacity, and I think it's okay to experiment with unstructured ways of storing data. If you'll remember, the original philosophy behind SQL was that no piece of data is replicated, and one of the reasons and drivers behind Ted Codd's original work with structured query language was to preserve space, because space was expensive. Now, back in 1985, well, yes, it was, but not anymore. In fact, it's almost too cheap now.
Yes.
But before we turn ourselves into a coding and technical show, rather an entertainment and punditry show, I'd like to drag you back from the precipice of deep technology and ask you to call this one out. I mean, clearly they're doing it and they're going to do it.
This is real.
Is Microsoft's move into Linux environments, Android, iOS environments, is that just a flirtation, a Satya Nadella flirtation with different channels? Or is it something which is now going to be ingrained into the DNA of the company from this point going forward? Absolutely.
People forget that Microsoft have been a major contributor to the Linux kernel for many years. They probably don't advertise that as much as they should do. This is another string to their bow. SQL is great. It deserves to be on more platforms. This is fantastic. It's not the beginning of something new, because I believe Microsoft are already on that new path. Satya Nadella is doing a fantastic job. There will be more of this. I'm going on and on and on. This is real all over.
Okay, thank you very much, James. I think you're right. Hey, that's it for this week. You can find us at facebook.com/Techtasm. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher or Feedburner, and you can contact us at feedback@techtasm.com. And remember, if you're subscribed on iTunes, please leave us some stars. We love them. Now, the music we use on the show is actually courtesy of Joe Little, and if you want to hear more of his work, You can find him at soundcloud.com/joe-little-1, and that's the number 1. We record every Tuesday at 2100 BST GMT, so watch out for more episodes coming soon. This is me, Robin Yellow.
And me, James Woodall.
Asking the question, is it real? Or is it just a Techtasm?